It is the second day of June 2014. A very good evening to you. Welcome to KTN Prime.
Yes, we're glad to have you with us. We hope you had a restful day today. Now, at a time like this, next year, the government does say that your life will be easier.
That's right. The president says his government will focus on crucial areas that will better the life of an ordinary Kenyan.
But what areas are these, and will the Jubilee blueprint for the nation actually be achievable?
KTN's Asha Mwila begins our coverage this evening with a perspective on Uhuru Kenyatta's fresh promises to Kenyans.
In 10 days, Treasury will present Kenya's budget for the coming financial year. And the president has already hinted at the priority areas for his government.
The central part is Kenya's first all-inclusive budget for 2014-15 financial year, aimed to delivering direct benefits to 8 key areas in each Kenyan household in the months to come.
President Uhuru says the focus will be on food security, infrastructure, security, health, and education. 3 billion shillings is set to be allocated to the Galana irrigation project. But will this guarantee food security? While Uhuru's government scored big by giving farmers fertilizer subsidies, a major food crisis is looming owing to the failed rains, with farmers left stranded due to few irrigation options.
Tumekuwa tukiambiwa na watu wa weather forecast kwamba it will rain cats and dogs. But unfortunately we have not seen. What we have seen is wind and very sunny conditions.
And the biggest challenge for the government got its fair mention on Sunday, with the president appearing confident in the new security strategies.
We are introducing CCTV cameras in major cities and towns, as well as broadband connectivity at border points.
What the president's speech failed to address, however, is how his government will address the never-ending clashes in northern Kenya, a region crying of neglect from central government.
Tuko nyuma kabisa na tumewekwa nyuma kabisa, na vile tumewekwa nyuma na hata hiyo maendeleo yetu inakuwa nyuma, kwa sababu vijana wetu kama hapewi ID na hakuna kazi watafanya.
Even with this mounting criticism, the president chooses to focus on the positives. He plans to pump in 4 billion shillings into the free maternity program launched last year.
My government will, in addition, utilize 3 billion shillings, which will be set aside for the leasing of medical equipment.
Despite the fund increase, however, the free maternity plan has staggered into its first year, with hospitals buckling under the strain of increased demand.
The key to providing the things is to develop a sustainable healthcare financing model. Because you see, a proper healthcare financing will then make sure that money is put where it's supposed to be put.
But perhaps what stood out the most in the president's Madaraka Day speech was this.
Our allocation for primary education will rise by 39% and 33% for secondary education.
A mention of his predecessor's pet project, the free primary education scheme, and no word on his own education project, the free laptop project for Standard 1 pupils. With the Jubilee government now well into its second year in office, there is increasing pressure from Kenyans hungry for a delivery of these promises. And with a clear 8-point strategy for the next financial year, time will be the president's biggest challenger. Asha Mwila, KTN, Nairobi.
Now, one of the areas that the government says it's going to accord fresh attention to is security, and we've had a couple of terrorist attacks in the country in the past 1 year, and this is taking a toll on our economy, isn't it, Nancy?
Absolutely, and of course this is one of the conversations that has to be had. What impact is the whole security situation having on the economy? We're going to look at that right now. Of course, this was a big issue in the president's Madaraka Day speech, and he talked about CCTV cameras being introduced in the major cities and towns. He also talked about recruiting 10,000 more police officers. Now, for people who are doing business, and of course for all of us, the economy is a very fragile thing, and of course security has affected that. Let's see how. Now, to see the impacts that the whole security situation with regard to terrorism has on this economy, we'll go back to the year 1998 and do a bit of history. Now, the U.S. bombing, the U.S. embassy bombing rather, led to a 7% fall in tourism numbers. But let's compare this with the election violence that did happen back in 2007. 27% was the fall in tourism numbers there. So a huge difference. And actually studies have shown that political unrest causes more problems with tourism than terrorism actually does. Apparently people do bounce back a lot quicker after terrorism incidents than they do after political unrest. And there was an 18% fall in tourism receipts as well after the election violence, which was a lot more than what happened with the terrorist bombing in 1998. Let's take a look at the effects of Westgate. After the Westgate incident, the Kenyan shilling did not change much. It actually only barely changed, and it was at 87.25. The stock market was affected, but it did lose just 0.3%. So not earth-shattering, these numbers. There definitely was an impact in terms of the economy, but it wasn't that bad. Let's move forward now and take a look at what the Westgate attack was predicted to have done. It is estimated that it's shaved off 0.5 points off Kenya's economic growth in 2013. So there definitely was an impact there in terms of how the country is moving forward. Also, it has been shown that terrorist attacks here do lead to significantly lower stock returns at the Nairobi Stock Exchange. So that has to be considered as well. And when we look back at the last few months, especially the month of May, we had more than 4 attacks in that same month. About 16 people dying. Terrible situation, of course. And this did lead to the Kenya shilling falling to a 9-month low, the lowest it had been in 9 months. That happened in May. And we move forward again and see what happened to the businesses as well, because they are affected too. We all remember Westgate. Nakumatt actually lost 1/10 of its revenue in Westgate. This was definitely one of its biggest earners, and they make about $500 million a year. So this is about $50 million in losses for Nakumatt. And businesses in Eastleigh have also been affected. The situation there a few months ago was quite difficult. It is estimated that almost half the businesses were operating at less than 20% of what they should be doing. Also, the property market in Eastleigh was severely affected. Now, we've had reports that a house that used to be rented for 15,000 shillings had gone down to as low as 10,000 shillings. Now, if you're a business owner paying a mortgage on that property, that's going to be difficult. Also, there were some instances where people were moving out. We did see a report where one apartment with about 22 houses in it had a quarter of the residents moving out. That is definitely a severe blow, especially if you're paying a mortgage on that property. And it is predicted that in Eastleigh there will be a loss of more than 70% in sales because of the insecurity in that area. And for an area that makes quite a bit of money every month, that's quite a blow. Also, tourism is one of the big areas that has been affected by security, and we've seen this. We've seen travel warnings being issued and the number of tourist arrivals going down. Well, the Kenya tourism industry is a big deal. It accounts for 11.9% of GDP. So more than every 10 out of 100 shillings that the government makes is coming from tourism. It employs more than 600,000 people. That's a large number. Now let's take a look at what happened in 2013 after Westgate. Tourism arrivals dropped by 16%. So it's taking a big chunk out of our 11.9% GDP. Also, what happened at the Kenyan coast has been rather drastic because bookings are down to 15% in some hotels, and yet a hotel needs 60 to 70% in order to break even. More than 3,000 employees have been let go this year alone in the tourism industry, and it's estimated that travel warnings could cost this country 4.9 billion shillings in revenue. So the impact is still quite far-reaching. But it's not all doom and gloom. The Tourist Board plans to spend 200 million shillings to market the country, and they're doing this majorly online. They have some online campaigns. This will improve the SEO, or the search engine optimization, in terms of when you do a Google search for Kenya, hopefully the first thing that pops up will not be news about a terrorist attack, but news about the great places you can visit in the country. The government also aims to attract about 1 million Chinese tourists to the country per year. At the moment, there's about 45,000 coming in every year. So hopefully these measures will do something to mitigate the effects that terror has had on this economy and in particular on tourism. So Wilson, the question is, will this be enough?
Will it be enough? No, time will tell, wasn't it? Will it not? Now, let's move on from the dilemma of insecurity to a crisis of identity in Wajir County. And Wajir Governor Ahmed Abdullahi says that thousands of young Kenyan men and women in Wajir have not been issued with identification cards for over 5 years. A state of affairs that he says has blocked the progress towards gaining employment and steeping the county even further in a crisis identity. And Wafula has just returned from Wajir and now reports on the crisis that many say is pushing the youth there into the arms of Kenya's enemies.
Just like other parts of the country, residents of Wajir assembled to commemorate the 51st Madaraka Day. 51 years on, many here have been unable to acquire identity cards despite having been born and schooled in Kenya. Now the county government is stepping in.
For the jobs that are available locally, to the extent that they are qualified, we will not make an ID a requirement to employ them.
But this could be risky. Wajir borders both Ethiopia and Somalia, complicating the process of identification in that region and adding the risk of insecurity. Governor Abdullahi isn't taking no for an answer.
That has been used as an excuse to in a sense, not issue IDs to the local population here. The vetting process is tedious. The registration itself is, is done very few times. It's very few and far between,
After all, the government has said now the system of devolving government has started.
A street conversation with both the young and the old paints a clear picture of the sensitivity of matters identity.
Kama serikali vile yametusahau, basi hakuna namna zingine ya kufanya. Serikali atufikirie vijana wetu wote hao hawana ID. Wote hao hawana ID. Sasa hao vijana watafanya kazi gani?
To my view of understanding, it seems that the local ones are having more problems than the foreign ones. Because if you're foreigner and you came within that day, I hope it will not take even more than 3 or 2 weeks. But to us, maybe it takes 3 years, 2 years for us to get an ID.
But sometimes, mambo ya uhalifu inaletwa na kitu kama hiyo. Mtoto anakatazwa ID, hawezi pata kazi. Mzazi yake amemaliza pesa kwa kusomesha yeye. Ako na shida, ako na njaa, hawezi patiwa ID. Baadaye hiyo mtoto atafanya nini? Ile uchungu anasikia, anaenda kujiunga na wahalifu.
And since a lot of these young men are jobless, their vulnerability to a more radical path that would threaten Kenya's internal security is widely acknowledged.
They've been offered to be paid $500, for instance, just across the border by these terrorist organizations. What happens?
Residents here believe that devolving the functions of the immigration department could help resolve in part what in this part of Kenya is a complicated crisis of identity.
As basic as this identification card looks like, this is not the case here. Majority of the youth here have been forced to stay within the borders of this county and are not able to pursue other opportunities that are out there. It is time for the national government to intervene and make the process of acquiring this identification card easier. Ian Wafula, KTN, Wajir County.
Now, renowned Kenyan actor Joseph Oita is dead. Oita will be best remembered for his portrayal of Idi Amin, the critically acclaimed film The Rise and Fall of Idi Amin. The 70-year-old succumbed to high blood pressure yesterday morning. KTN's Edith Kimani has the details.
For most of his adult life, Joseph Oita was known by another name. To many, he was former Ugandan dictator Idi Amin. But Oita did not mind. It was, after all, because of Amin's infamy that Oita became wildly popular in 1981 when he starred as Idi Amin in the acclaimed film The Rise and Fall of Idi Amin.
I want you to take some few men, have them dressed in Tanzania uniforms, and go to the border and do a bit of damage.
Joseph Oita would later fizzle from fame with articles sprouting every so often, focusing on his heyday. In his last article with the Standard newspaper, Oita described his dream to go back to the silver screen, but this would not happen. This past Saturday, family members say Oita developed high blood pressure. Oita had buried his mother on the same day, and the stress reportedly escalated his health condition. On Sunday, Oita passed away at his rural home in Kogelo, far away from his adopted home, Uganda.
Tell them I've gone to Gulu.
The man who portrayed Amin so well will be remembered for his stellar performance, although he made appearances in other films, including the 1991 Mississippi Masala. His family and friends may, however, remember a lot more than the movie star. Oita was a humanitarian who in 1998 formed the Galamoro Network, a non-governmental organization that focused on raising awareness on HIV and AIDS pandemic, and an author who had 2 books in his name.
At that time when even our media or our entertainment sector in the acting could not reach even at the international level, he managed to make us proud as a Kenyan to reach at international level.
Kenya has lost a great talent, like in his movie where he was the main actor, The Rise and Fall of Amin Dada. Like he brought it, like if you didn't know Amin Dada, you would think that he's the real character, and that video was shot like it was the real thing.
But it is undoubtedly his portrayal of one of the most brutal men on the African continent, a man Oita said he would have loved to meet, and one who he greatly resembled that he will most be remembered for. Joseph Oita died at the age of 70. He has left behind 3 wives. Edith Kimani, KTN.
A life well lived. Well, next, CORD leader Raila Odinga wants the government to guarantee the security and safety of all Kenyans. The former Prime Minister says the government must put in place measures to deal with the rising insecurity in the country. Raila, who was accompanied by Kisumu Senator Anyang' Nyong'o, was speaking when he visited former Mungiki leader Maina Njenga at his current home. Maina was involved in a shooting incident which left 4 people dead on the 24th of May. He sustained gunshot wounds in the incident, which occurred as he travelled to Nyahururu.
Sijaona mtu yoyote ambao anashughulika, ila tu ni kuitwa Kajiado kuanza kuhojiwa uhusiano yangu na Mheshimiwa Raila Odinga, uhusiano wangu na kina Kalonzo na hii watu ya suti inasemekana ni wale ambao waliharibu kura za ODM.
Let us assure every Kenyan that he or she is equal before the law and is safe. And that assurance should come from none other than the president himself.
Now, you may have seen an advertisement sponsored by the National Campaign Against Drug and Alcohol Abuse NACADA, in which a shirtless man, apparently in a drunken stupor, swishes about in a puddle.
Now, that may be the image that NACADA wants you to form about alcoholics, but according to former NACADA chairperson Joseph Kaguthi, what you've been shown is a degrading misrepresentation of the disease that is alcoholism.
NACADA chair John Mutudho has defended the advert. Sharon Bomai now delves into the brewing controversy around an ad about alcoholism.
On behalf of the government of Kenya,
it is the advertisement that has stirred fresh controversy from the man who first chaired the agency sponsoring the ad, Joseph Kaguthi.
It's not helpful to destroy somebody at all, so that you are educating us. After all, we are now all reacting
Kaguthi argues that the national campaign against drug and alcohol abuse's shock and awe ad strategy only scares and doesn't solve.
That shock is not showing anything. Use that kind of money in going to schools and let the people who have gone through that motion, and you know they are there, who like to come out. I was like this, let them come out and show that one can be rehabilitated.
But current NACADA chair John Mututho says that Kaguthi isn't reading the serious signs of the times as concerns alcohol abuse. His take, a little shock is necessary.
That gentleman who is captured by the camera is not acting. It's his real thing. He's fighting for his life. What we should be asking ourselves, is he alive? Was he treated? The answer is yes. We must come out clear and clean that as a nation we have a problem. We must come in clear that this is a problem we can fix. We must not just hide behind bureaucracies that we don't work out.
The facts about alcohol are shocking enough though. 84 people died early May following the consumption of poisonous alcoholic drinks.
Last year, we lost about 7,100 Kenyans. These are real Kenyans. We have a problem, a deep, deep problem. And I would like...
The vehicle veered off the road, ploughing into pedestrians in the late afternoon. The injured were rushed to Kiambu District Hospital in critical condition. Confirming the incident, Kirigiti Area Chief John Ikinya said that there have been a number of accidents along the Kiambu-Ruiru Road and calls on authorities concerned to erect speed bumps to reduce overspeeding. Just last week, a pupil was hit by a speeding vehicle and died on the spot in an area that is now considered a black spot.
Inafaa serikali kupitia idara ya barabara iweke bump ya kucontrol speed angalau ili gari ziwe zikikimbia hapa sana, kwa sababu hasa watoto wa shule wamekufa sana.
Now, it's one of the most revered public spaces in Nairobi, mostly because of how unique it is. The animal orphanage, located on the edge of the Nairobi National Park, though now is in the center of controversy, with conservationists opposing a plan to expand the orphanage into the park, which KWS says is packed to capacity as it is. Rita Tinina spent time in the animal sanctuary for a first-hand look at why giving animals in captivity more room could endanger animals in the wild.
From the King's Roar to the majesty of the fast and the mighty, almost all of Kenya's wildlife can be seen roaming the country's plains and forests. Not all animals, though. Some live in captivity, not cultivating their natural instincts. These are often sick or injured animals whose survival in the wild is threatened. Welcome to the Nairobi Animal Orphanage at the Nairobi National Park. For the last half a century, the orphanage has provided refuge to animals in need.
The orphanage was established to take care of those animals and, where possible, rehabilitate them back to the wild.
This lesser spot-nosed monkey, the only one in the country, was intercepted at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. She was being transported from Benin to Egypt. Safi the lioness enjoys a nap. Her sister Jambo whiles the afternoon away. The two and their brother Agwambo were rescued from Samburu after their mother, a livestock raider, was killed by the local community. Now adults, the siblings share a 50 by 50 square foot cage. Next to their cage, 3 lionesses and a lion share a cage. 17 lions call the orphanage home.
If you go around our facility, you will see that there is a lot of overcrowding in small-sized enclosures, and also the layouts. The layout of the orphanage is not proper.
With an increasing number of animals requiring to be nurtured as well as visitors to the orphanage, the Kenya Wildlife Service is now planning to expand the Nairobi Animal Orphanage.
Various concerns have been raised about conditions in the orphanage that are impacting negatively on animal welfare.
The orphanage currently sits on 5.8 acres of land. KWS wants to expand it by an additional 11.6 acres. But some conservationists think that's a step in the wrong direction.
The solution is not to expand the orphanage. Animals, in a matter of fact, are absolutely miserable in a confined environment. Should KWS get animals that are injured, they need to be treated and rehabilitated back into the wild.
Conservationist Josephat Ngonyo argues that KWS has not followed due process, including calling for public participation and involving the National Land Commission.
These requirements are not in place, and therefore it will be illegal to proceed with this expansion.
The plans to expand the orphanage started way back in 2012. And from 2012 up to now, we've been doing internal diligence within the management of KWS. And we've developed a development plan which has been approved by our Board of Trustees.
KWS has already identified and fenced off the land for the expansion. Land will be hived off a section of the Nairobi National Park. Here's the dilemma. The park, the only one of its kind in close proximity to a capital city, is battling for its survival, threatened by the Southern Bypass Road and a construction boom in areas adjacent to the park. The land earmarked for the expansion is adjacent to the existing orphanage.
We've also done an EIA, that is Environmental Impact Assessment, in which we consulted various stakeholders. And the report has been submitted to NEMA for approval.
KWS should not put the cart before the horse, so to speak. They should have done all the due process, and once they have gotten authorization from NEMA to go ahead, that is at that time when they should have gone ahead.
KWS says it will not clear the vegetation in the new area to help mimic wild conditions and will zone the area according to animal species.
You'll find certain species that are not supposed to be housed next to each other, being the case. For instance, you'll find buffaloes housed next to lions, which can be very, very stressful to both species.
That's why we have the safari walk, and that is the reason why safari walk was created, to provide more space for these animals.
For half a century, this orphanage has acted as a window into what Kenya's wild has to offer. But the latest move to expand it has once again exposed the uncertain future, now facing one of Kenya's most treasured parks. Rita Tinina, KTN, at the Nairobi Animal Orphanage.
In KTN Prime, and we're giving you something new to look forward to every Monday. Job Center, that's right, it's moved from Saturday, and we've got Bonnie Tunya in our business studio. He's got a guest as well. Good evening, Bonnie.
Good evening, Nancy.
How's it going? Tell us, what are you bringing us on Job Center?
Great. Like you said, Job Center is bigger, better. It's moving from Saturday to Monday. And what we're trying to do is have a conversation that is more geared towards problem solving. We've had a lot of situations, and we've done this in the past on Job Center, where we've highlighted people who are exemplary in their fields of study but cannot get jobs. We've highlighted employers who are looking for these people. We've had that conversation, but what Job Center is doing from today onwards is driving this conversation into a more objective territory. We were saying, why aren't you getting that job? Who has that job? And how does that build a society at large? So it's bigger and better, as you say.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it.
Great. And Job Center starts now. Right. And one of the toughest questions facing millions of Kenyans today is this: where can I get a job? A competitive job market, in a market where job opportunities are hard to come by, makes answering this question even harder to answer. Tonight on Job Center, though, we went to the streets of Nairobi to get your opinion on what else stands in the way in your search for a job that is ever so elusive. Take a look.
You can afford to get a job through the use of your papers, but networking also works very, very well. But you see, even if you had a very nice network and you didn't have good papers, you still may not go very far.
Ya umesoma na uko na degrees na pia unajulikana. Kwanza Kenya siku hizi lazima uwe na watu naita godfathers. Ukiwa na hao kupata kazi ni rahisi. Lakini kama huna hao pia huna connection vizuri, sahizi kupata kazi Kenya ni imekuwa na changamoto kubwa.
Unajua kupata kazi hapa, kazi ziko kidogo. Sasa vile ziko limited hivyo unapata kuna na competition. Sasa vile kuna na competition, vile tunaweza escape hiyo trap ni kukuwa tu na creative minds. Sasa kwa na hiyo creative minds, si ati government ndio itatusaidia, si ndio tutapata tunasaidia government. So government inaweza kuja kwetu kwa msaada.
It's so hard to get a job really in Kenya right now because most of the times it is leans more on who you know. Actually, even if at times you have papers, if you don't know any person in the organization or if you're not linked to someone or a godfather per se, it's not so easy to get a
kazi. Kenya uwe na makaratasi uwe hauna ni sawa. Tuna wengi ambao wana madegree na hawana kazi, na wengine hata unakuta mtu amesoma ana masters analandalanda tu hakuna kazi. Sasa tunashangaa tunaelekea wapi? Sijui kama ni tuache kusoma ama tuache kusomesha watoto. Hiyo inastua sana.
And we seem to be getting more questions than answers from the streets of Nairobi, where getting a job is ever so elusive, and people are saying, well, I have my academic credentials, but what else stands in the way of me getting my dream job? And like we said earlier, getting a livelihood and a meaningful one or a decent job is every young person's dream. After coming from high school, from college, from vocational training, you want a job, but this job is just not there. But joining me in studio is a gentleman whose job is to get you a job. I'm talking about Pamina Swenaina, who is HR at the Corporate Staffing Services. All they do is, simple term, they hook you up. Karibu sana, Paminas.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Paminas, you've seen that conversation. People are saying, well, over and above my degree, I don't have a job. There's a lady who's saying, should we stop tuache kusoma? Something like that.
Yeah.
From where you sit and you deal with this every single day, what is this that stands in the way of a young person who's gone to school and wants a job?
You've brought up a very important aspect.
Right.
And what I can say that if you look at the labor market right now, the number of graduates being churned out on a yearly basis by the universities, the numbers are bigger than the opportunities out there. So it calls for you as an individual to be very creative in your job search. Because unlike in the earlier days where in your third year, somehow you knew where you'd end up in terms of a job, right now it's very competitive. So you are finding it's very easy to give up, and that is where you are hearing some of the respondents say you have to have a godfather, you have to know someone and all that. You have to be creative, and you must know that the method that works in the 80s and the 90s, they're not
where your
applicable.
Uncle writes a small note to the boss of a certain corporation.
Yeah. Remember, at that time, probably you were the only graduate in the village.
Right.
Right now, the private universities, the universities are churning close to 100,000 graduates.
Right.
So look at the numbers and the opportunities out there.
Well, Naina, you've talked about being creative. What exactly does this entail? Well, I've gone through school. I have my BA. I got lucky, had an year to spend, so I did my MBA. And I'm here looking for a job. How more creative can I get?
The best way to answer that is to tell you what happens, for example, at our firm, Corporate Staffing Services.
Right.
Whenever we put a job advert, you probably find between 800 to 3,000.
Okay. For one job vacancy. Right.
For one job vacancy. And out of these, majority meet the minimum.
Which is, say,
they have the education that you want, a university degree, they have a professional paper, and they have maybe 1 or 2 years of experience.
Right.
So what I'm looking for as a recruiter is that something extra. Have you been in leadership position?
Right.
Have you demonstrated that beyond the qualifications I'm looking for, beyond the skills that I'm looking for, there's something additional that you can give to an employer?
And this is what employers are saying. A lot of the people putting up their applications are not job ready.
Yes, they just assume because I have the minimum qualifications, I have the papers, that I deserve this job. It doesn't work that way.
Pamina, in putting out our CVs, we always write our hobbies, and I'm good in poetry, I like photography. How useful is this information?
The question to ask yourself by the time you put pen to paper is how relevant are they?
Okay.
If probably I'm looking for a salesperson and you tell me that in your spare time you do make presentation out there, that's fantastic.
Okay.
But
if you are a good hairdresser,
yes, if you're a good hairdresser, it doesn't add value.
Right,
yes.
right.
So the key thing here is to ask yourself, not even just in terms of hobbies, whatever you're putting there in paper, how relevant is it? Because also, even I as an employer, I don't have all the time to sit down and critique your CV and try to look out how suitable you are.
Right.
Yeah, make the work easy for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Paminas, there are a lot of us who are entitled, okay? So you go to school, you've done your Bachelor of Commerce, you've done your CPAK, and you're thinking, someone needs to give me a job. Yeah. There's this employer who's seated on this other side who says, well, you can have all that, but you're not quite ready, okay? And so you may need a bit of time to get to that point where you're actually giving value. Are we also saying that our training does not meet the job requirement out there?
I would say it's two ways. We were talking off camera and I was telling you that universities nowadays, they've expanded.
Okay.
And they're not able to give that individual attention. So in terms of guidance, the universities are failing there. But even you as an individual, we are seeing a trend where nowadays people are spending more time accumulating papers.
Okay.
As opposed to actually practicing what they've learned.
Okay.
For example, when it comes to accounts, you don't have to have completed accounts for you to go
You
down
don't need a
and be
CPAK.
useful. Exactly.
Okay.
You don't need that for you to be useful. By the time you're done with part one, you could get some internship somewhere, practice, get some relevant skills. Because employers know.
So this is what you're actually looking for?
Yes.
You're looking for someone who's been there.
Who's been there,
Right.
who understands how an office lands, who understands the kind of response. You know, when you've worked in an office, there's something you learn about responsibility, about how to deliver, to meet the expectations of the employer and those ones of the client. So employers are looking at those do you have those soft skills? They are the things they can be able to add on. Yeah. But unfortunately, those soft skills, you can only get them in an employment situation. It might mean you volunteering at no cost.
Okay.
It might mean you going for several internships.
So we need to move away from this idea that when I'm looking for an internship, I'm looking for a job.
Yes, precisely.
That I'm hoping that at the end of my internship, these people feel nice and retain me.
Yes.
So we need to open our minds and realize that maybe that's what it is. It's just an internship.
It's an internship. Right. It's an opportunity for you to enhance your skills. Yeah. And remember, actually consider yourself lucky because their employer is using resources to train you.
Right.
Yeah. You are not productive at that stage.
Right.
Yeah.
Paminas, there are also lots of people who've gone for interviews. You're highly qualified. You did not get the job because most probably the person interviewing you also doesn't know exactly what they're looking for. Do we have those cases?
We do have those cases, and I would say, but firms are also looking into upgrading,
right?
If I may use that word, because what you're finding is that they are realizing their mistakes. When you hire someone and you aren't very clear from the beginning,
right,
chances of this person delivering to expectations are very minimal. So you're finding, at least for firms, they are going back to the drawing board and seeing where did we make mistakes. If it's developing proper job description, they do that.
Right.
If it's using consultants, they also do that.
Right. We're bringing this to a landing, but Paminas, as an individual, say I apply at one of the big firms, and a multinational, a blue chip. We're talking about the Safaricoms, the EABLs of the day. How do I get to know exactly what I'm bringing into this, other than my qualifications? What do I tell the panel when they tell me, what exactly are you bringing on the table? I mean, this is a big organization recording interesting and impressive numbers in terms of their revenues. This single young person, straight from an MBA class, what do I know that this is exactly what I'm bringing on the table?
Bonnie, you've got to know yourself, and you don't get to know yourself on the last day or when you want a job. You've had 4 years in campus.
Right.
What achievements have you had during that period? Write them down. Yeah. If it's leadership position you had, write them down, no matter how minimal it may look. Yeah. If it's somewhere you went for a conference, came out with something, just have also that one.
So we need to have a culture of documenting.
We need to have a culture, exactly. People need to realize
that
who am I as a person.
Seminar in Limuru on leadership is something that you could be looking for.
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Paminas, our time is up. It's a Monday, still on holiday, but final word to a young person out there who's looking for a job. They might have the right qualifications. What is this one thing that they can do as a tomorrow and improve their chances?
They need to start taking initiative.
Okay.
The world does not owe them a job.
The world owes you nothing.
It owes you nothing. It's
Right.
for you to take initiative. It's for you to go out there. You face disappointment,
Right.
but you only become better.
Right.
If you take initiative.
Uh-huh.
From tomorrow, Tuesday, 3rd of June.
Yes.
Yeah.
Take initiative.
Yes.
Pamina Zonaina, who is the HR at Corporate Staffing Services, has been speaking to me on what exactly you need to give you that edge. And as he says, the world owes you nothing. And these are the kind of conversations we'll be having every Monday at about 9:30 on the Job Center.
Well, it's now time for sports. I'm Nicholas Mudimba. Harambee Stars coach Adela Mrushi, on arrival from Comoros, showed journalists his harsh side, snubbing all the questions. While in Comoros, Stars secured a 1-1 draw to qualify for the second round against Lesotho.
The national soccer team Harambee Stars arrived from Moroni, Comoros after a triumphant campaign at the island. However, there was one man who seemed to have scores to settle with the members of the fourth estate.
Always negative, always negative. I don't know, sometimes we win, like we lose. We draw, like we lose. I don't know. You can't record this is not true. We are all negative.
Harambee Stars head coach Adela Mrush did not waste time in attacking journalists for interfering with his work.
Why don't take Oliesh? Ask Dennis.
No, not about
this is your
Oliesh.
question.
All the players made a return, including the Euro-based players, among them scorer of the lone goal in Comoros, Ayub Timbe.
Hiyo free kick asituni nilichukua ball, ilikuwa mimi nipige ama Mgabe, na Mgabe akaniuliza wote yuko na do, na nikamwambia tu for sure Mgabe inaifunga. So ilikuwa tu kitu nimeplan in my head.
National soccer outfit Harambee Stars will now take on Lesotho in the second leg of the Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers after Lesotho edged out Liberia by 2-0.
Lesotho tukutana nao Kosafa na tulikuwa chini 2-0, tukajaribu tukakuja ikaisha 2-2. So at least najua coach anajua ako na information kwa uso.
We have to plan differently for this match. We have to plan now like a new match and give everything to it.
Hiyo weather yao as in ni humid sana. So ilikuwa ngumu for wachezaji, unaweza sema the whole first half tulisweat sana na ilikuwa game ngumu. Si hata Nairobi nasema ilikuwa rahisi kidogo.
Harambee Stars will play Lesotho on the 16th of July. Victor Ogale, KTN Sports.
Now moving on, Alan McTrick led his car number 5 to win the 2014 Rhino Charge event. Gray Cullen with his team by the name the Smiling Shenzis came in second in a hotly contested event that raised over 102 million shillings. Car number 5 led by Alan McTrick completed the course in 31.340 kilometers, followed by Gray Cullen. Car number 53 also impressed in the event, coming in third. Jamie Manuel and Brandon Barber with their 100 Break Foundation managed to finish third. The Rhino Charge Coupe Disdems award went to Bush Babes in car number 19. The event went down Kalama, located in Girgir Group Ranch, Waso Division, Samburu East, covering 46,100 hectares. All right, over 30 karatekers converged at the Thika Road Mall Hall as they continue to shape up for the National Open Karate Championships slated for this month. The Federation hopes the national event will bring out the best out of the karatekers. The team that took part in the Botswana Games did not perform as had been expected, partly due to lack of proper training facilities and the sponsors. And the involved governments have been asked to help improve the sport. Participants from all over the country are expected to participate in the June national event here in Nairobi.
Well, it's just about time to say goodnight, but before we do that, we did ask you whether you think shock therapy works, whether you agree with John Mutulo that showing that advert is a good thing. Well, let's see. We have some tweets here. One from Adura Sami, who says the advert is okay, at least it's a positive impact in reducing death cases in our country. Not sure that can be proved.
William Ballack says that advert was morally unethical. Even how it was aired remains a mystery. It's even an abuse of one's freedom of privacy.
Kevin Elegwa says these antics aren't working. It's high time we get new people with new ideas.
Well, that's all we had prepared for you tonight. We're very glad that you have been watching KTN Prime. Have yourself a blessed evening.